Hello to you. Hello. Thank you so much for being here. Just wanted to kind of drop in. We have a show today, so we're very excited to have you here. I know that sometimes the headsets and the voices don't quite punch out immediately when the camera comes up, so I'm trying to get you just into the room and say hello to you. I'm Verna Collins Odom of Podbites with Verna, and I'm so glad you're here. Of course, that show, Podbites with Verna, is designed to inform you, to inspire you, and to ignite you to action in your life. We have been focused, of course, on hidden figures this series during this season, season two, and we're so glad that you are here to meet another one. I'm excited. She is going to be in a few moments, I hope. I don't see her here as of yet, but let me tell you a little bit about the show. Like I said, we do one-on-one interviews on Podbites with Verna, and we try to give you bits and pieces of their lives, and that's why we call it Pod Bites. You get bits and pieces of their lives, and you hear about what they're doing, what's going on, and how they have become successful, however they define success in their lives. Some people define it by their job, some people define it by their family life, some people define it by their faith. But that's what we're looking at. And I am waiting for our guest to show up. I do see that Luz is here. Hello from Puerto Rico. I love that you showed up. Thank you so much. That's Luz Ortiz. Met her earlier on one of the shows, and she has become a follower of Podbites with Verna, which I really appreciate. I'm so happy you are tuned in. Good to see you. And so I don't see our guest as of yet, but she should be showing up in just a couple of moments. I see Angie is here. Angela Curry is here, and she is one of my dearest friends. She comes on a lot to support me, and she also helps me brainstorm for Pod Bites with Verna. So she is working behind the scenes with me as well as coming in to support. So hello, thank you so much for being here. And like I said, we're just waiting a few minutes for our guest to show up. I haven't seen her as of yet. Let me go into the waiting area, our screen, and I don't see that she is. So I am Xing out of that. But as I said, hey, I really appreciate it. And there she is. There she is. So let me get her on. Her name is Deidre Johnson, and she is actually the executive director and the CEO for the Center for African American Health. I'm going to go ahead and get her on here if I can and see if she stays her. So I'm going to go back to my seat and see if it does it successfully. Sometimes these get a little tricky, but they've been working okay recently. So I'm hopeful, very hopeful. And so she is going to be our hidden figure of today. There she is. Hello, hello.
Hello.
How are you, Deidre?
I'm good. I had a little fire drill because my neighbor decided to do some yard work. So I had to run, ask him to turn off that machine.
Don't,
But I did it nicely.
don't you love that? Well, you must have a good neighbor. The fact that they didn't turn it up louder, they decided to go ahead and kind of help you out, huh? Well,
I did.
I love it. Everybody, you were looking right now at Deidre Johnson. She is our hidden figure for today. Thank you so much for coming in and joining us. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yeah, well, we should have a good chat. And I was just letting people know kind of what you do, that you work at the Center for African American Health. You are the CEO and you just run things there. And we want to talk a little bit about it. Of course, it's based in Denver, Colorado. And I'm going to get to your backstory a little bit about your history, about your schooling, about the jobs that you've had. But I want to jump right in really quickly and let people know what the center does. And I know that one of the lines that I read and one of the goals of the center is to empower the community to live well. Okay, huge goal. Tell me, what does that mean to empower the community to live well? Can you just give us a little bit about what that means to the center?
I can. We're a community-based organization, and I look at it as two ways. We help actual real life people live their best lives, whether it's through education, connecting them to services, but we also do our best to get systems to change. There are a lot of systems we live within that we actually don't realize how they can be doing much better by us when it comes to access and making things a little bit easier. So we both do the systems piece as well as just help people become as healthy as possible given the resources they have.
Okay, and how do you do the systems piece? Is this something where you have people that go out and lobby? What sorts of things do you do with the center that helps with that system end? Because I know we've talked about the people end, and that is very important. But the system end, tell me about what you do with that.
It's interesting. So we started our own research panel called Be Heard Mile High. And we have about 1,200 members right now, but we do different surveys. So if anybody wants to know what the African American community in Colorado thinks, we can share that information. Um, really started that out of frustration because for many years, if you really wanted to know what different communities of color thought, you'd be told, oh, we don't have enough data. Um, let's take some census data and make some assumptions. And we were just tired of secondhand data.
Mm.
And so I found out from my predecessor that we had done a survey of churches in 2011 and had 2,000 respondents, which felt pretty substantial. Didn't realize how substantial it was until I talked to our public health department to find out that when they did a survey of our community, they only had 200.
Okay.
So that really told me it's all about who's asking the question.
Mm.
And as a trusted organization, we're really able to get a good response from our community members. And for example, during COVID last year, the state was doing surveys. Because there was a low response, they had us replicate the same survey. In about a month, we were able to get close to 600 responses.
How do you set
just so they
yourself,
would know what was happening?
yeah, how do you set yourself up in the community like that? I mean, for you to be trusted in that way, has there been a lot of information? I know that you have different events and different programs, but how do you gain the trust of the community like that for them to be able to respond and therefore get the help that is needed to make a difference with all of these disparities?
I think it's partially history. So I'm the second executive director. We were actually founded in 1997. We started out as the Metro Denver Black Church Initiative.
Okay.
And so we were doing a lot with churches, partnering on after school programs, health programs, working with families of incarcerated parents. And so in 2005 became the Center for African American Health and really drilled down into health specifically.
Okay.
And I joined, it'll actually be 6 years ago next month. And I think just having been here for so long and kind of maintaining that trusted relationship, there's, especially for our community, it's not just the talking about it, it's the doing.
Yeah.
And so we have many examples of how we've helped folks. I was there late on Friday because we just gave away 120 Thanksgiving dinners. So we're trying to always kind of stay relevant. We've been doing a lot around COVID, whether it's vaccinations or education. And we also have a reputation of when our voice needs to be heard, kind of being at those tables, whether it's with the State Department or the city, letting folks not forget about us.
Okay. Tell me, what is the situation with folks in Denver that the center was needed? I mean, it's obviously across the country, probably around the world, but tell me why, and I know you weren't the founder, but obviously you took the reins from the founder. Why was it seen that this is needed here in this community? Because you have lots of places that might do similar things, not the same. So I kind of want to talk about that. But you have places that do programs that talk about diabetes. You have places that do programs that talk about high blood pressure. Why start this organization? Why was it needed? And are you seeing the results that you were hoping to see from doing this?
It's interesting. So our community suffers from persistent disparities that we've had for generations, whether we're thinking about diabetes, high blood pressure, asthma. There are a number of things. And I used to use a kind of a rule of 3 to 4. Any disease you think of, we're likely more 3 to 4 times more likely to die from it. Some of them even more extreme, like when it comes to maternal mortality. And so, yes, there are other groups that do different programs, but there's also something to be said for that culturally responsive approach. And so our model is really a community health worker model. So our staff really reflects the community they're dealing with. And I have to admit, you'd be surprised how often folks in need are further traumatized by being judged or blamed for their conditions, when really we're just in a system that makes it hard, especially if you're an African American, to be as healthy as possible.
Why do people find that hard to understand, do you think? What is that people find hard to understand? Because people say, well, you have access to a doctor's office, you have access to the same information I do, you have access. Do people have access? Do people know about the access that they have? Or what do you think is the reason that there's that misunderstanding about why folks are in the position and why there are such disparities?
There's so many things we can take for granted. I can take for granted that I can go a couple blocks away and go to a Whole Foods and buy exactly what I need. I can, regardless of what time of day or if I'm on my job, I can push a pause button and go see a doctor. Well, let's say you're working one of those important jobs where you couldn't, during the COVID, you couldn't work from home, but you had to be there, essential jobs where you're not allowed that opportunity. So you might be sick or you might have a sick child, but you're working one, if not two, in jobs and can't even get off to go to the doctor during working hours. And it was interesting. A few years ago, we did a study, and we did show that thanks to the ACA, which some people like to call Obamacare, African Americans had great coverage, but at least in Colorado, they were still going to the emergency room.
Okay.
And the access problem wasn't that they didn't have insurance. It was not being able to get off work to go. That's when I learned that our car ownership was half of everybody else's. So even if you can get off, but you've got to rely on public transportation, which may or may not be truly serving your neighborhood. So there's all these different social determinants of health that we don't talk about really. And what that means is only about 10 or 20% of our health has anything to do with our ability to go to the doctor.
Okay.
The rest of it is, do you have access to fresh food? Do you have a house? Do you have a job? Do you have social connections? Are you educated? All of those determinants really work together to boost our overall opportunity to be healthy. And what's so interesting is really for about at least a decade to 20 years, we've been able to measure that. We can measure it down to the zip code. And you can see that certain zip codes where people are living because they've got more resources, they have more wealth, they'll typically live 10 to 20 times longer simply because of the environment within which they exist versus other communities which, may have a lot of, well, in our state, weed and liquor stores, but not schools or not early childhood places that are safe, definitely not fresh food. In fact, I was at a conference a couple years ago, and I used the term food desert, and a professor at University of Chicago corrected me, and she said, don't use food desert because a desert makes it seem like it's naturally occurring. It's really food apartheid because we plan where to put these resources.
Okay. That says a lot. I mean, I've never heard that, and that is amazingly true and accurate. It's not like, yes, they're naturally popping up. Grocery stores aren't naturally popping up, and hospitals aren't natural, doctors' offices, or that's incredible. I think that that's something that has to be said. That apartheid, I love that. I hate that, but I'm saying I love that that's the way it needs to be looked at because these are choices, conscious choices that are being made. Always wanting to connect the people, and this is what we're doing with the big company or the big center. And so you're talking about the differences that's being made in people's lives. Do you have information that shows, hey, we have this many more people that are doing X, Y, and Z? They're finding access. They're finding a way to, their doctor's appointment. Because you were saying it's not really access. Some of it might be just, I don't have a car, or I cannot get off my job because I cannot afford to not have, the money for that hour, hour and a half that I'd be away. Are we making a difference in that end? And are you seeing results?
We are kind of day by day, family by family. But when you think about the challenges our community faces that have been generational, and so much of this is related to poverty and racism, that we're going to have to truly have huge population changes, we're going to have some really dramatic social changes. And I don't know if we're there yet, but I know there are a lot of organizations doing their best every day to just help a family transform and have a better opportunity. And it's so interesting because some of these things start early. A lot of people know that the importance of third grade reading scores, and that's because we learn to read until third grade, and then at third grade it's flipped and you're reading to learn.
Okay.
This is so important that I was shocked 20 years ago to find out that some states will plan how many prisons they need to build based upon the third grade reading scores. Because rather than helping those children, they're just assuming, oh, well, they're going to go down this pathway, so let's get ready.
Wow.
Equally important to that measurement is a child's weight at age 5. So if you have an obese 5-year-old, you already know that if nothing's done, they're going to likely have diabetes, high blood pressure, you name it. So there's so many, that early childhood period is such a huge opportunity to really change a child's trajectory. But you got to help the whole family. You can't just try to do something for the kiddo and nothing for the parents that are its support system.
Yeah, well, some people will look at this and say, hey, this is Denver. This is their numbers. This is the Black community. I'm not living in Denver. Maybe I'm not Black. Why should I be concerned? Why should this have value in my life? What does it mean to me? Can you speak to that? What do you think is the reason, or should it be of concern to people who are not in these sorts of communities?
It really should be of concern to all of us. And so even though our numbers are relatively small in Denver compared to other states, our numbers are similar to Latino numbers and other groups of color across the US.
Okay.
And ultimately, we have to decide what kind of community we want to live in. And do we want a community in which the least of us are struggling, or do we want a community in which we make sure everybody has an opportunity? Doesn't mean that everybody's going to cross the finish line, but some of us don't even have a fighting opportunity to be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember I was at a conference years ago, and I heard this quote that I'll never forget. It was about hunger, and it was, hunger hurts not only the people that experience it, but the communities that allow it to exist.
Mm.
And that just stuck with me because I'm constantly using it.
Yeah.
But also because that can be applied to so many things, because there's so many resources, like early childhood, and I used to do that before the job I'm in now.
Mm-hmm.
That is the best opportunity to set children up for success. But the payback for it is often 17 years down the road. And we're so fixated on, we want to see results tomorrow,
Right.
when that's not the way the world works. But if we really did right by children and families, we would need fewer prisons. We would need fewer support services because they'd be able to support themselves.
I was going to ask you, is there buy-in from folks? Because I know lots of times when we have programs that are offered by various groups, there's the thought, hey, just eat better, just make these kind of choices. So let's speak to that for a moment. In groups, do you find that people are willing to make choices and do things? I'm not talking about things that have to do with, I can't take off my job. But if they're able to make a choice, if they do have a choice and are able to do so, are making those choices that are going to have the long-term positive effect, because that is important. What you're saying is important for the institutionalized kind of the situation, for them to think of what the ramifications would be if that's not happening early, but also for the folks. So like, I'm just thinking in my house, for instance, I'll give you for instance, I'm telling my kids, you cannot eat sugar all the time. It's not good for you. They're kids. I ate it growing up. We had sugar, we had sweets, we had burgers, whatever, But my question is, are we able to make that difference and help folks to see that you need to change, make these sorts of changes now? Because if you don't, this could be the road that you start going down. If by 5, little Johnny's not reading, if by 5 he's overweight, we could have this problem. Are we able to talk to the folks who live with Johnny about that? And are they responding to those sorts of things?
I think they are. It depends on that family situation.
Yeah.
So if you've got someone that's just in crisis for a number of things, it's going to be less likely.
Sure.
But if you're dealing with a family that's looking for different solutions and things are stabilized with regard to their housing and job, then they have more time and capacity to, come for that healthy cooking class.
Right.
And we've also found that when you engage the children, that helps engage the parents. And so we've got partners that'll do kind of shopping trips, and we've in the past done cooking demonstrations. And some of it's, moderation. Because I have to admit, I'm getting ready for Thanksgiving and I'm pulling out all the regular stuff,
Oh, right.
but I don't eat that
Right.
unless it's Thanksgiving.
Exactly. The rest of the year, it's like I can be pretty good with that. Yeah, you're right. You're right. This is the time to talk about that. And so, yes, I see what you're saying, that people are willing to do it, but all of these systems are kind of connected. So, I mean, if you don't have a car, it's very hard to talk to somebody when they are dealing with like the life issues. I need to have food, I need to have clothing, I need to have shelter. And you're talking to them about decent cooking and not eating fats. I mean, it's not, it's just not there. And I can get that. So I see how the systems are very connected. Just want to share with you all a couple of bites, I'll call them, about your background. Since this is Podbites, I try to throw that in where I can, just so they can get a perspective. I do this so they can kind of get a perspective about kind of where you've been, what you've done, how you're connected to kind of where you are now and the steps that you took, whether it's a linear, progression, or if you've been kind of bouncing around to get to where you are. So you have been the president of a consulting practice that you owned on strategy development and program assessment for foundations and nonprofit. You've also been in a position that you manage nearly $20 million portfolio of foundation investments that were designed to increase what you were talking about, children's access to health care and coverage. You've also been the VP of Marketing and Communication at a trust that focused on healthcare and wellness equity. As well, you are a Princeton, Cornell, and Yale University graduate educated. So you are definitely a person who has had a lot of education. You've had a lot of experience, and you seem to like this arena, nonprofit, children, health and wellness, and families, children and families, health and wellness. What drew you to that? Because I'm thinking when you look at your background, your educational background, let's just say, folks can think of you could have a job doing anything, making a whole bunch of money, and maybe not as focused on what you are focused on. Tell me why you made that decision. Why did you not go the route of, hey, let me make some money and let me do my thing, not necessarily ignoring the masses? Why did you make a decision to do nonprofits, to have this be your baby?
You know, it's interesting because I don't know if it was so much a conscious decision as life was unfolding.
Mm-hmm.
I've always wanted to do things that interested me.
Okay.
And so I'm an entrepreneur's kid.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was always raised that you can kind of create what you need to. And really, other than working for my dad or working for myself, I've only worked for nonprofits. I've never done kind of a corporate stint.
Yeah.
And when I've had opportunities, which happened recently, I have to know that, because first of all, you know, if I didn't have to work, I wouldn't. But I need to know that what I'm doing, there's a line of sight to someone else being helped in some way.
Yeah.
And my heart space has always been, like, my soul work is making sure things are better for kids.
Okay.
And so that's where it started. I was a fundraiser for different nonprofits in Colorado. And then I had the opportunity to get into philanthropy.
Mm-hmm.
And that was even more fun because I could help direct different resources.
Sure.
And then the reason I started my own consulting firm at the time was the foundations go through changes. Mm-hmm. And so this one had a leadership change, and they jettisoned a group of us. Mm-hmm. And it was a good time for me to think about what I wanted to do next. And it was interesting because when I talked to someone told me, Deidre, your brand is getting things done. I'm like, oh, that's good.
That's good brand. Oh, yeah.
But when I talked to folks, some people saw me as health. Some people saw me as early childhood. But I just like working on complex problems. Okay. So I did some work with a university here. We did an evaluation in Baltimore around economic integration. So really, as long as it's something that helps people have their best life possible and brings more resources, mm-hmm. I can pretty much get jazzed about that. And, you know, we do a lot at the center. I must admit, I've been there 6 years. Mm-hmm. We now own our own building, and I've tripled the budget and changed the business model. Yeah. If I was working somewhere where we only did like one topic and the same thing every day, I couldn't do it. Yeah. I'd have to give that to someone else. Yes, you'd have to step aside. Yeah, I mean, and just to be perfectly frank with folks, I do know Deidre outside of this interview, and I've known you to be very detail oriented and very involved with folks and very interested in having real conversations and seeing how people are. So I definitely understand why you're in this space, but I just wanted to ask, because I've never had that question, or never asked that question of how you got mm-hmm. involved and what attracted you to that, because obviously you could be doing a lot of things other than that. And a lot of the folks that we've actually had on Podbites, especially during this Hidden Figure series, I keep hearing that sort of thing. Folks want to give back. And we're seeing it. It's not just, you know, the conversation of, hey, I wanted to do something great for other folks. You're actually seeing that they're making decisions that might not be benefiting them in the way that some people would traditionally think of, you know, making the most money or going out there and having the most notoriety. But they are doing something that makes a difference and is going to impact generations. And that's what you said, that you're interested in impacting a family. And it might take generations to see it, but you have to put in the work now, and you want to do that. So I appreciate that in you. That's just incredible. So I wanted to ask about linear, whether you feel like you had a linear approach. So it sounds like a lot, like you said, you worked for your dad, you owned your own business.
You were interested in children's issues. So I wouldn't necessarily say linear, but do you feel like you can't necessarily see how you ended up where you are? Because that's the question I usually ask. How did you end up from the pieces of your life that you put together, little snapshots, the little bites of your life? Can you see how they got you where you are now, as far as your work and as far as your life in general?
I can.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because on the one hand, I was offered to apply for different things. So I had the opportunity to be in philanthropy. Um, I actually, the board of the organization I'm at now reached out to me because the founder was leaving to see if I'd be interested in applying.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to admit, before the health foundation I worked at, I had never worked in health. I'd been in early childhood. Um, but I have to admit, and someone told me this years ago when I was coming out of business school, if you just prepare, one day you'll find yourself in a position where you're drawing on all the things that led you here.
Yeah.
And I think the other part of my journey that I didn't realize was happening was just my own less than desirable interactions with the healthcare system.
Okay.
So I have two sons. I ended up in ICU after both of their births with postpartum preeclampsia.
Mm-hmm.
But it happened because doctors wouldn't listen to me.
Wow.
And so now we're doing a lot around maternal health access.
Okay.
And I didn't share my own story at first, but I got tired of hearing, oh, these Black mothers, they're not educated, they don't have resources. I'm like, wait, stop.
Hello.
My mother's a nurse,
Yeah.
I have multiple degrees,
Yeah.
and the same thing happened to me, and here's why.
Yeah.
My father passed away in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
In the last 18 months of his life, he had undiagnosed dementia.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget, I took him to a place to get him some help, finally.
Yeah.
And this white doctor said to me, well, you're right. He is paranoid. He thinks people are out to get him. He's also delusional because he thinks he's a mathematician. He thinks she went to Princeton. He thinks your sister's at Hopkins. And so he couldn't see us at all. So I had to snatch him out of there. And so
Oh my God.
that position we're in where we have to deal with a system that can't see us.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm doing that work right now.
Okay.
And so each time, I can speak to an incoming class of MDs or nurses and tell them just to slow down and do better.
Yeah.
Because you can't help someone you can't see.
Definitely. That is.
And the other piece of it is our community expecting more.
Yeah.
Because the system doesn't get better if we don't demand it.
Exactly. And so to use your personal story, I just think that is how you broke through in some regards. But the sad thing is that has to be a story that's told. Everybody doesn't have that story. Everybody can't say, hey, wait a minute, so you're talking about us across the board or people across the board. This is my story. And so many times people are just shocked that you have that story, I'm sure. And the fact that it took that story to maybe gain the medical attention that your dad needed at that time of his life. So those are always stories that touch me personally because, of course, my dad, my family very well, and our circumstances and how we had to kind of push. I mean, I had to fight tooth and nail for him, toward the end of his life, and it was just it's rough. So it's unfortunate, but glad that there is a center like yours that tries to get folks the help that they need, tries to help people to understand, and tries to make these changes that we've talked about within industries as well. So another thing I wanted to ask you is we have something that we call, I laugh because it doesn't actually become the speed round. I say it's going to be the speed round, but then of course I have 50 million follow-up questions. And so it becomes like the slug round. So I probably need to change it. But one thing I wanted to ask is as far as you and as far as what inspires you, what makes you, what's your passion? And I think I can name it, but I want you to put it into your words. Your passion, the thing that you're passionate about in life is obviously your work, the kind of work that you do. Tell me tell me your passion. I'm putting words in your mouth. You tell me your passion.
I think my ultimate passion is helping to drive resources where they need to go, but also helping the African American community realize that there's so much abundance and so many things out there for us as long as we realize that we deserve them. Because a lot of what happens is when you grow up with a view of lack, it crowds out all the other possibilities. And so, even in my being able to get this building for us, I was told by multiple, let's say, nonprofit peers, oh, that'll never happen. You're not going to be able to do that. And now that we're there, everyone's celebrating it, but it's because I'm wired not to listen to that. I'm like, okay, watch me.
Yeah.
And I think we need so much more of that. And, I'm about to be an empty nester, and that's what I'm working on my sons. It's like, what? There's a whole world out there. And we want you to be in the driver's seat and decide what you want to do that nourishes your spirit.
Yeah. And that's what you feel like would make them well-rounded. Are those the things that you're pushing them toward, doing what feeds you and nourishes your spirit, nurtures your spirit?
I say that, I think ultimately we'll find out how much they listen to me.
Right.
But they, I do say that a lot.
Yeah. Well, tell me about lessons in your life. So I talked a little bit about, there's sometimes when, people have come on and they've said, yeah, I had a lesson and I had to ditch that one and this one worked. Tell me about lessons. Where is the best lesson that you've ever gotten? From whom did you learn that lesson? And what was it? Or the best advice, lesson or advice that you've gotten from somebody? Who was it and what was it?
Oh, professionally?
Either. It could be personal or it could be professional.
I think for both, the best advice I ever got was, trust your instinct. Because I was also raised very much, it's important to be an achiever. You've got to work 3 times as hard to get half the recognition. And while that can lead to different successes, it's also an exhausted existence.
Yeah.
And as much as I've gotten a lot of things done, and I'm a doer, it wasn't till, to be honest, going through my divorce process where I decided, you know what, I've got to stand up and prioritize and protect Deidre.
Did that feel different?
Then, things are just, it did, because I was used to doing that for my kids, for my dad, for my sister, for others. And even now I do it for community. And so learning that intuition and self-care is just a practice. You do it daily, and there's no finish line. It's just ongoing. It took me a while to embrace that, but I've embraced it now.
You're like, I'm full into it now.
But it did.
You can say no now, huh? So no can come out of your mouth now.
Yes.
Or no. No, I'm kidding. And so as far as sacrifices, do you feel like to achieve what you have, and again, success is what people feel it is to them. So success could be whatever it is to you, however you define it. But to achieve the success that you have you had to sacrifice, and what sacrifices have you had to make?
I've always, even though I might not have prioritized my own needs, I've always stood up for what I thought is right. And really the only 2 times I've been separated from employment was because Deidre was the one in the room, like, demanding an explanation of why this is happening.
Okay.
That's why I, was graced with a severance and left philanthropy.
Okay.
But I wouldn't change it, because I have a pretty strong sense of justice.
Okay.
And if you're gonna do this, people need to be treated well.
Sure. Tell me about failure. I talk to folks about failing, and I talk to folks about, obviously it's fine. You can talk about the past failures and that sort of thing. And then you see them and you're like, oh yes, I learned a great lesson. It's great to fail. But when you're in a failure and something's failing, it doesn't feel great. Tell me about a time that something didn't work out for you, a failure, or something you would consider failing, and how you dealt with it at that time.
It's interesting because work-wise, I've always been able to see work from a distance. So I actually am a believer in try something, fail fast. If it's not working, you kind of use that and learn from it.
Okay.
And then since we're sharing the personal,
Okay.
I hadn't told you this, but
Oh,
so I was married for 15 years.
yeah.
Um, the last 10 of that was to someone I was afraid of.
Okay.
And it wasn't until I was on my way out that a sister circle shared with me, Deidre, this is a DV cycle.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, it's not. I'm like, and it really was, but I didn't see it until I was on my way out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But for so long, I stayed there because like, I can't fail at this.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to be here and I'm good at fixing stuff. I get things done. I can get this done for my babies.
Yeah.
Until I realized we were just demonstrating dysfunction. And I made that move because the fear of the unknown suddenly was much less than the fear of staying.
Yeah.
And now it's been so neat about the last 4 years is I think my sons have seen like a mom they've never seen before, like kind of that lighthearted, laughing, fun mom, like let's get on the plane, we're going to France for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Wow.
And our relationship, it was always good, but I think it's even stronger now because they know I'm there and I'm just doing me and telling them to do them, but I'm demonstrating it versus talking about it.
Okay.
And I think it felt like a fear of failure at the time because, I definitely had parents like, oh no, you never get divorced. And like all those external voices I was following. I was not supposed to be telling all this, Verna.
Well,
but I was following those external voices versus what my own spirit wanted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate you
But now
being.
everything's kind of aligned.
It sounds like I appreciate you being that transparent. I really do because I think somebody needs to hear that story. And I know you said DV. Do you mind if I just say, just in case anybody missed it, it was domestic violence. And no, I did not know that.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate you sharing that story because, like I said, somebody needs to know how to get to the other side and to see the you that you are still giving to people, still caring about people, still supporting people, encouraging people, and knowing that you are okay. And also the self-care. I mean, I appreciate that in you too, because that is important. And I'm a person that also has to work on the self-care. So maybe we'll have a chat later and we'll talk about self-care. But
yeah.
I really appreciate that. And I know your sons are very excited to see the you that you are. Now, we talked about missed opportunities. We talked about failure. What do you think you can impart on somebody who is looking for that thing to do? A lot of the viewers might be somebody looking to do something new. They're looking to do what they're doing maybe at a higher level. And of course, Podbites with Verna is about inspiring people. It's about informing people. It's about igniting that thing in people to make them do what they've been called to do. And sometimes they started, but maybe they're like, I'm not doing exactly. What would you say?
I found that for myself and others, usually you're the only person in your way. So once you can get out of your own way, you can likely end up in places that even surpass what you dreamed of. But you got to get out of your own way.
Oh, that's great. And
because you really have nothing to, like, we have absolutely nothing to lose.
No.
In most of the things we want to try.
How did you make that determination for yourself? How did you get out of your own way?
We're gonna keep doing that. it's like it's a practice. Yeah. So I'm working on a memoir.
Okay.
And I actually have an agent that's waiting to look at it. The perfectionist in me, it's like, well, it's not ready yet, but it will be. Yeah. But it's about my father and I. Mm-hmm. And there's so much of it has to do with navigating race in America. Mm-hmm. But the first couple of years, my issue was, I've always been a good writer, but for some reason, because of what I was trying to do, I didn't want to own what I was doing. I'm like, well, this is not a memoir. This is just a story about my dad because he was amazing. Yeah. And I would workshop it and folks would say, Deidre, like, where are you? Where are you in this? Yeah. And so part of it is, I guess I'm circling back to, part of getting out of your own way is valuing who you are, knowing that, you've got all the tools you need, and what you don't need, you'll be able to figure out. It reminds me of what someone was telling me, that, especially with women, a lot of women won't apply for a job unless they meet 100% of the things on the posting, where a lot of men, as long as it's 25%, they'll go for it.
I believe that. I believe that. And it's that thing that they do that I'm like, why don't we do that? And I think, like, you're right. I think some of it is just how we've been not raised. I don't mean our parents did that. I don't mean that at all. It's just how society is. It's kind of how you think, how you look at yourself, and the value you place on yourself, and the expectations that you have, I think, for yourself too. I expect to be able to do
Right.
these 25 things that they said. If I can't, then I don't think I'm ready. But you're saying, get out of your way,
Right.
try it, and see. You'd be surprised possibly at what you're able to do. How about a redo? Have you ever wanted to have a redo in your life? Is there anything that you've done and you're like, oh, wish I could do that over?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
There's still a lot of things I wish I had already tried, but now that I'm about to be that empty nester, those are the things on my list.
They're on the list.
And I'm excited to say my board approved a sabbatical.
Yes.
So next year I'm going to take 3 months, and part of that will just be kind of thinking like, okay, what should that next it be for Deidre? Because I'm a builder. I like building things.
Yeah. What would you do next? What's your next? What do you think? What does it look like? I know you're going to be thinking about that, so I'm not trying to rush you, but what is on your mind? What are you going to be thinking about doing next?
Definitely more writing.
Yeah.
Not only am I going to be finishing this memoir, but I'm going to start for work doing like a health equity blog.
Okay.
Next year. And when I think about the other social determinants that are so critical, one is economic opportunity.
Okay.
And how do you create more opportunities for families to develop wealth? But again, that's still more social venture versus just a nonprofit serving the public. I'd like to do something that has a social venture at the heart of it.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay. What are the things, this last couple of questions, what are the things that inspire you? Like, what get you up in the morning? What is the thing that gets you going, get your juices flowing? And what is the thing that might keep you up at night? When I say keep you up at night, I mean something that you can't put to bed, like something that you might be concerned about, something that would weigh heavy on you that you'd say, okay, I have to deal with this, and it just keeps you up. So what gets you up? What gets you motivated and going? And then what keeps you up because you can't put that thing to bed?
I think the work does both. It gets me up and sometimes it keeps me up. I must say, when we were raising the dollars for this building, there were some days where, yes, it was important, because when you think about sustainability for a nonprofit, having your own facility can be a huge benefit. And so there were times where, because what I'll often do is I'll throw a javelin and I'll just work my way to it. Do I know how I'm going to get there? Absolutely not. But I was raised, well, if anybody can figure it out, you can.
Yes.
And so every once in a while I wonder, did I throw that javelin a little too far for me to get to?
Okay.
But just try different things, and I usually just make it. But that can, like, my stress tends to be self-induced when I've done that.
Okay. Well, I wanted to let folks know, I just appreciate you talking, first of all, but I'm going to give some bites to go, which are comments that you made that I wanted to highlight a little bit. So we call these pod bites to go. So you said that there are lots of social deterrents, you said, that have to do with health disparities. And so those things have to be fixed and worked on to have huge population. Say it one more time.
Social determinants.
Determinants. Oh, it's my
social
writing.
determinants.
Thank you. It's my handwriting. I'm like, deterrents.
SDOH. Social determinants of health.
That makes sense. Thank you. Social determinants have to do with health disparities. Thank you. You also talked about huge population changes that have to happen in order to see for there to be huge social changes, huge population changes have to happen. So you're not going to make these big changes next week, next month, and people have to be more patient, but have to continue to do the work now for the results later. You also talked about that all communities have a lot of opportunity as long as folks get out and trust their instincts. So there are things that people are needing to do, wanting to do, but they have to trust their instincts as far as doing that. One thing I really liked, you said, try something and fail fast. That's what you do. As you say, you try it. You might not know
Right.
what's going to happen along the way, but you fail fast, you learn something, and you can move on to something else. And then you said, usually you are or we are the only person in our way. So valuing who you are is very important. So I just, like I said, really
Yes.
appreciate your time, your comments, just everything. And I just wish you the best. Can you tell people how to get in touch if they wanted to find out more about the center? Can you give the website just so that folks can find you and find out the great work that you're doing?
Oh, definitely. So we're the Center for African American Health in Denver, Colorado. Um, our website is
Mhm.
www.caahealth.org. We also have our Be Heard Mile High website, which is www.beheardmilehigh, because I'm an old English major. I can't have stuff misspelled.
So no
.org.
HI.
And but yeah, the thing we've noticed, and we're starting to do a little bit more, is we haven't run into any other organization like us.
Yeah.
So every once in a while, um, I've recently had a discussion with an African American group in Arizona that wants to collaborate on disparities. I'm getting ready to have some other COVID conversations. So despite the fact that we're in the Mile High City, feel free to reach out.
Okay. Okay. Well, that sounds great. And I'm sure folks will want to find out more information because, like I said, people want action. A lot of people now are like, I'm tired of talk. I'm tired of talk. So people want action. You gave us some really good points. And hopefully, I mean, even if it's something that you can go armed with your information, your questions, and even just talk to your doctor, even make yourself be heard, that was value in this conversation. So I really, really appreciate that. And I'm going to go up to the camera and try to read any comments that came in. I did this last week and I shut down the camera. So I'm going to be very careful today. And I saw some folks had written a couple of things. So we had somebody come in. She's from Puerto Rico and she said hi. She was saying hi. We have somebody who is here watching. Betty is watching. Bob is watching. We appreciate you guys watching. Powerful testimony, somebody said. A friend of mine, Angela Curry, said that. And just folks are just enjoying the show and sending up hearts and all sorts of things. So I know that it was of value, the information that you gave. So thank you for the time that you took. I really appreciate that.
Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, no problem. And everybody, typically we have one of these every Sunday at 4 o'clock. But this coming Sunday, of course, is the Sunday after Thanksgiving. So I'm just being honest. I'm going to be doing some family stuff and I probably won't be on, but I might stop by just to say hi to you. We'll have the guests take a break and then we'll come back the very next week with our next hidden figure. So thank you all so much for joining us. And we will see you back here in 2 weeks, 2 Sundays from now. But again, I'll drop in during the week just to say hi to you. All right. Thanks a lot, Deidre. I'll talk to you soon, I hope.
Thank you.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Be well. Bye bye. Bye, everybody.